Hello, my name is John Fernandez, and today I will be discussing the progress that I made through my summer project on pump probe imaging. I performed this experiment in the AOFIM lab under the supervision of Dr. Chow and PhD student Gong Chen. My goal was to use pump probe imaging to study the laser material interaction in the ultra-fast time regime to understand the physical processes that take place after a laser pulse irradiates a material surface. The image shown here depicts the reflection of a laser irradiated spot on a silicon sample surface after 400 picoseconds have gone by after interaction. In summary, I spatially and temporally overlapped pump and probe pulses using the optical delay line to find the autocorrelation signal. I then captured images of the reflection at the interaction area at calculated delay times after irradiation. I then determined a change in the physical structure of the material occurs at 100 picoseconds based on the observation of Newton rings. And through this process, I learned the basics of geometric optics, including alignment techniques and collimation. I also learned how to operate the optical delay line, CCD camera, and femtosecond laser, and control them using a LabVIEW program. So laser material interaction is important for understanding the timescale of the ablation process. Ablation is the removal of material from irradiation. And throughout this experiment, we seek to answer the questions: when does melting occur? When does plasma generation occur? When does resolidification occur? And is this process in the femtosecond, picosecond, or nanosecond time regime? So the pump probe imaging system is a valuable technique in investigating ultrafast phenomena. Shown here is a schematic of a simple pump probe system in which a laser source emits a pulse, which is then split into a pump and probe path using a beam splitter. The pump pulse goes through a path such that it hits the sample at a normal angle, and the probe path goes through, or the probe pulse goes through a path such that it hits the sample at an angle after a specified delay time that is controlled using a delay line. And the illumination from the probe pulse is used by the camera to observe the effect that the pump pulse has had on the sample. So this is the setup for my pump probe system, in which a femtosecond laser emits a single pulse of wavelength 1030 nanometers. That pulse is then split into a pump and probe pulse using a beam splitter. The pump pulse, carrying 90% of the power, is directed in a path so that it irradiated the sample surface at a normal angle at the focal point. The probe pulse passes through an optical delay line to control the time it illuminates the sample, then passes through a BBO crystal to double its frequency, then a half wave plate and polarized beam splitter to control its intensity. The reflection of the probe beam is used to image the interaction area with a microscope objective and CCD camera. The first critical step in creating a sufficient pump probe system is to spatially and temporally overlap the pump and probe beams. This is done using an IR card to observe the position of each beam and adjusting mirror number 2, shown in the schematic, of the probe path so that the probe beam overlaps the pump beam at its focal spot. To temporally overlap the two beams, we made both beams travel about the same distance. So determining the precise zero delay line position for temporal overlap is done by measuring an autocorrelation signal. Autocorrelation signals occur when two beams are spatially and temporally overlapped when passing through a BBO crystal. This image shows where the pump and probe pulses meet, where we set up a camera to measure the intensity of the autocorrelation signal. To find the autocorrelation signal, we scan the optical delay line, varying the time that it takes for the probe beam to reach the sample. When the delay line is at a position where the pump and probe paths are the exact same distance, that means that they're temporally overlapped. We measured the intensity of the autocorrelation signal for small intervals of delay line positions, and the maximum signal corresponds to the zero delay. This delay line position is very useful, so we know exactly where to position the optical delay line for when we want to observe the sample after precise time delays after irradiation. Next, we want to position our sample so that the pump pulse irradiates it at a normal angle and its focal position. The sample sits on a 3D stage where we can adjust its position. We want to know where to position the stage so that the sample is irradiated by the focal point of the pump beam, resulting in maximum energy absorption. We do this by sending a single pulse to the sample at a range of stage positions and measuring the diameter of the crater that was created by the laser pulse. The minimum crater diameter represents the stage position in which the focal point irradiates the sample. The image on the left shows the crater created when the sample is placed just after the focal point. The middle image shows the crater when the sample is placed at the focal position, and the right image shows the crater created for a stage position before the focal point. As you can see, the middle image has the smallest diameter, and it is also the most circular, meaning it absorbs the most concentrated energy, as the other two have more elliptical shapes to them. Now that the experiment is set up properly, it's time to collect reflection images on the sample surface after desired delay times. We control the laser, CCD camera, and optical delay line using a LabVIEW program. This diagram shows a sequence of events that take place for capturing an image. First thing that happens is the delay line moves to the delay position that corresponds to the desired delay time. This is a parameter that we can control. Then LabVIEW sends a trigger signal to both the CCD camera and the laser. While the CCD camera is preparing to capture the image, the laser delivers a single pulse, which is then split into its pump and probe paths. First, the pump pulse irradiates the surface, and then after a specified delay time, which we control with the optical delay line, the probe pulse illuminates that surface, and at that time, an image is captured. So reflection images were captured at delay times ranging from 0 to 400 picoseconds. Starting off with 0 delay image, there is little reflectivity. After 500 femtoseconds, the reflection becomes a little more intense, but there is still not much noticeable change. By 500 picoseconds, you can see a subtle ring forming on the outside of the interaction area, and at 25 picoseconds, it becomes even more defined. By 100 picoseconds, the ring is very noticeable, and you can start to see the formation of a second ring inside. By 400 picoseconds, we can observe 2 to 3 rings, maybe even 4, if we had better resolution inside the interaction area, indicating that by this time, the surface has gone through some physical changes. So from the data collected, we can observe that at 100 picoseconds, Newton rings occur, suggesting a change in the surface structure. The physical mechanism that may explain the change in reflectivity is that after the laser interacts with the sample, electron hole plasma generation occurs. We can simulate plasma density using the two-temperature model, and we can use the Drude model to predict the reflectivity change induced by plasma density. This is one possibility that may be the explanation for our observations in our data. It's something that is worth looking deeper into to explain not only the change in reflectivity, but the formation of Newton rings. So in conclusion, I successfully spatially and temporally overlapped the pump and probe pulses using the optical delay line to find the autocorrelation signal, to temporally overlap them, and using an IR card to spatially overlap them. I then captured reflection images at the interaction area at calculated delay times after irradiation, and then determined a change in the physical structure of the material occurs at about 100 picoseconds after irradiation, based on our observation of Newton ring formation. And through this process, I learned the basics of geometric optics, including alignment techniques and collimation. This was a result of setting up the pump probe system, where I learned to align lenses, mirrors, crystals, and beam splitters. And then I learned the software and hardware of the optical delay line, CCD camera, and femtosecond laser, so I can operate them and control them using LabVIEW to satisfy the needs of my experiment. So I'd like to thank Dr. Chow and Gong Chen and the Emerson Fellowship Committee for giving me the opportunity to do this research. And that's my presentation. Thank you for listening.